My son makes his living selling titanium rods that get screwed into other people's spines. $411,000. That's what he earned in 3 months. I remember every digit, because that evening my wife stood in the middle of the kitchen, reading our son's earnings statement with the kind of pride you'd reserve for reading scripture. 3 weeks later, I sat hunched in my old pickup in the hospital parking lot. The heater had died. On the passenger seat was a CT scan showing that my aorta could rupture at any moment. The doctor said only one thing: if you don't get surgery soon, you may not have much time. I called my son to borrow $18,000, enough for a surgeon to place a 9-inch graft into the largest blood vessel in my body. The other end of the line went quiet for a few seconds. Then he let out a thin laugh. "Dad, do you have any idea how many calls I get every day from people asking me for money?" Before I could get a word out, he kept going. "I can't help you. Ask your daughter. She's the one who likes taking care of old people." Then he hung up. He didn't ask how bad it was. He didn't ask how much time I had left. He didn't even wish me luck. The girl he was talking about makes about $52,000 a year, spending her days holding stroke patients upright while they learn to take their first steps all over again. At the time, I thought my son had just destroyed the last stretch of my life. But 11 months later, I finally understood the most painful part of all. He was right. The one who never turned her back on me was her. My name is Vernon Kaczmarek. People call me Vern. I'm 61 years old, and I live in a half-double on Prospect Street in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, in the Wyoming Valley, where the Susquehanna sits in the bottom of the bowl and the fog comes off it every morning in October, like the river is exhaling. 6 days a week I run the scale house at Sokol Brothers Quarry off Route 29. That's the whole job. A truck comes in loaded. I weigh it. Later it comes out empty, and I weigh it again. The number in the middle is what they took. 22 years I've been doing that. Before the quarry, I was a licensed land surveyor for Luzerne County. 19 years walking property lines with a total station and a machete, reading old deeds written in perches and rods by men who've been dead since Coolidge. I was good at it. That's not bragging. That's the setup for how bad it got. Because a surveyor reads the map, and I read the map exactly right. I just never once thought to read the ground. It was the last Tuesday in October. 41 degrees, spitting rain, the kind of Pennsylvania afternoon where the sky is the same color as the road. I was at the kitchen table with a stack of mail I did not want to open. Shut-off notice from the electric. A letter from the insurance company thick enough that I already knew it wasn't good, because good news comes on one page. Darlene's phone went off on the counter. I watched my wife's face change. That's the thing I keep coming back to. It didn't warm up gradually. It switched, the way a floodlight switches, and 34 years of marriage was standing in the dark on the other side of it. "Trey, honey." She turned, not just her head, her whole body, so that her back was between me and that phone like I was a draft coming through a bad window. 400 and honey. Honey. She laughed. I hadn't heard that laugh in a decade. That's a whole year for most people, in 1/4. I sat there and listened to my wife talk to our son the way you'd talk to a man who'd just come back from the dead. I want to be careful here, because I know how this sounds. I'm not telling you that to make her the villain. I'm telling you so you understand what ordinary looked like in that kitchen, before any of the rest of it happened. She hung up, still smiling. She walked back to the table, and the smile came off her face the second her eyes landed on me, and I mean it came off like a coat. "He's doing so well." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. Whatever's happened between me and that boy, I never once wished him down. She didn't ask me anything. She slid the shut-off notice across the table with 2 fingers. "Handle this, Vern, before they cut it again. Again. Like it was a season. Like I was a season that came around. Hey, before we go any further, do me a favor and tell me in the comments where you're listening from right now. It's the best part of my week, reading those. All right, let's keep going. Now here's where I'm supposed to make myself look better than I am. I'm not going to. 14 years ago, I bought 44 acres of scrub above the old Glen Dorset colliery, out past Plymouth. I bought it because I'd spent 19 years walking that county with a survey rod, and I knew where the transmission corridor was going to run. I'd staked the preliminary alignment myself. Everybody said Vern's finally going to make some money. Darlene told the whole church. Then a borehole let go. There's 140 years of abandoned mine works under that valley, and they're full of water, and that water is the color of a rusted nail. Acid mine drainage. A plugged shaft on the parcel next to mine breached in a wet March, and the discharge came up through the fill and ran across my 44 acres and into a tributary of the Susquehanna. I didn't cause it. Nobody ever said I caused it. Doesn't matter. The state put a consent order on the whole discharge area, and my land went into it, and for 10 years I could not sell it, could not build on it, could not borrow $1 against it, could not do a single thing on this earth with those 44 acres, except pay the property taxes twice a year and watch my credit die. The bank called my line. My partner walked inside of a month, and Darlene never once asked me if I was all right. She asked me what I was going to do about it, which is a different question, and it took me 10 years to figure out that it's a completely different question, and that the second one, asked enough times, will hollow a man out from the inside like water in a mine shaft. I've weighed trucks ever since. My son was 22 when it happened. He'd been at Bloomsburg. He came home for what was supposed to be a semester, and he never went back, and to this day, at 33 years old, he will tell you that his father gambled and lost and made him pay for it. That's the version. I've heard it at 2 weddings and 1 funeral. Maybe he needed somebody to be the reason, and I was standing right there in the kitchen, easy to reach. My daughter's different. Liddy, 30 years old. She's a physical therapist assistant at a little clinic in Nanticoke. Works for a man named Ted Wozniak, who's been putting shoulders back together in this valley since 1979. She was 16 when the mine water came up, old enough to remember the good house, young enough that she watched me get up at 4:30 and go weigh trucks instead of just sitting in the dark mourning it. I think that's the whole difference, right there. Trey watched me lose. Liddy watched me keep going. She came by that Thursday with a foil pan of galabki, my mother's recipe, too much marjoram, exactly right. She set it on the stove, kissed the top of my head. You're gray, old man. It's October. You were gray in July. She was already opening my cupboard, moving pill bottles around, reading labels like a woman auditing a company. You've been holding your back. I've been 61. She stopped, turned around, leaned on the counter with her arms crossed, and I swear to God she looked exactly like her grandmother. Where in your back? Lide. Where? Low, left. Sometimes it goes around the front. She didn't say anything for a second, and I want you to understand what she does for a living, because it matters. She is not a doctor. She is a woman who spends 9 hours a day with her hands on people's bodies, and the human hand is a better instrument than most people know. You're going to Dr. Raghavan, she said. Monday. I already have the day off, so don't. I didn't. Not much point arguing with Liddy. She got that from somewhere, and I've got a strong suspicion it was me. It was 5.4 centimeters. That's what Dr. Priya Raghavan said, and she said it the way you'd hope somebody would say it, which is straight. An abdominal aortic aneurysm. The main line out of the heart, running down through the belly, and mine had gone soft and bulged out like a bad section of hose. 5.4 centimeters. She said the number twice. At 5.5 we operate. You're growing about 4 millimeters a year. She let me have 3 seconds. Vern, I want it done in the next few weeks, not months. There it is, I thought. The other boot. Okay, I said, because what else does a man say? So we schedule it. And then a very nice woman from Patient Financial Services came in with a clipboard, and she looked like she'd rather have been anywhere on earth, and she explained that the graft doctor, Raghavan, wanted to use the endovascular one. The one where you don't get your belly opened from your sternum to your hip was out of network under my plan. Facility fee. Device cost. The number was 18,000 and change. Before we can put you on the surgical schedule, she said. I'm sorry. It's a deposit. $18,000. I want to tell you something. There was a year, before the mine water, when I cleared 18,000 in a good month. I sat in that room and I could feel the ghost of that man sitting in the chair with me. I went out to my truck. A 2007 F-150, one working speaker, heater that has to be encouraged. And I sat in that parking lot in the rain, and I did the arithmetic about 6 different ways. It came out the same every time. I told myself I wouldn't call him. I held that line for 2 days. Then I called him, because that is what a father does. You put your pride down on the seat next to you, and you dial, and you hope God. You hope that somewhere under all that, the boy is still in there. He picked up on the 5th ring. I could hear it immediately. Glasses. A woman laughing at something. Somebody saying the word reserve about a bottle. Dad, hey, can this hold? I'm at Velozzi's with the regional guys. Trey, I need to tell you something. A shuffle, a door, then quiet, and his voice came back closer. Go ahead. So I told him. The aneurysm, the 5.4, the graft that wasn't in network, the 18,000 before they'd book an operating room. And then there was a pause. I want you to sit inside that pause with me, because I have been inside it every day for 11 months. It went on long enough that I heard the ice settle in a glass somewhere behind him. It went on long enough that a piece of me, the stupid, hopeful, 61-year-old piece, started building a future in it. He's doing the math, I thought. He's figuring out how to say yes. That's what I thought. I spent 11 years digging out of the hole your bad decisions put this family in, Trey said. His voice had gone flat. Not loud, flat, which is worse. Trey, this isn't the land. This is my aorta. You always do this. Something happens to you, and it becomes everybody's emergency. A breath. Ask the hospital for a payment plan. That's what they're for. Sohm. And then quieter, meaner. The voice you use when you've already decided you're going to hang up and you want the last thing to stick. I've got a life now. I'm not carrying you around in it. The line went dead. My son hung up on me while I was sitting in a hospital parking lot with a hand grenade in my belly, so he could go back to a table where somebody was telling a story about a bottle of wine. And if you have ever, one time, been the person on the other end of a pause like that, if you have ever let yourself hope for 2 full seconds and then been handed the bill for it, then you already know I didn't cry. You don't cry at that. Crying is for when there's still somebody to hear you. I called Darlene next. I told her all of it, and I asked her plainly if she'd talk to him. Soften him a little. Don't you dare do this to him, she said. He's finally out. He clawed his way out of your mess, and you want to reach up and pull him back down into it. Darlene, I'm having surgery. Then ask Lena. A pause. She's got a steady job. Lena. That's her sister's name. Her sister has been dead for 6 years. Our daughter's name is Lydia. She has never once in her life gotten our son's name wrong. Not one time. Not when she was tired. Not when she was angry. Not when she was in the ICU with her mother. But when she was busy being furious on Trey's behalf, my wife could not retrieve our daughter's name. That's not forgetfulness. That's a ranking. And it had been sitting there in plain sight in my kitchen for about 20 years, and I'd been weighing trucks and never once read the number. I hung up. I sat in that truck a long, long time. I met Lydia at the clinic on a Wednesday night, after close, because I was too much of a coward to do it anywhere a waitress could see me. She was mopping. Ted's clinic is 4 treatment tables, a set of parallel bars, a whirlpool that groans when it drains, and a corkboard covered in photographs of people who learned to walk again in that room. She had her hair up. She'd been there since 6 a.m. I sat down on the edge of a table and I opened my mouth to ask my 30-year-old daughter for $18,000. I want to be honest about the shame. It wasn't a feeling. It was physical. It sat in the front of my throat like a swallowed coin. I got about 4 words out. She put the mop against the wall and walked over and stopped me with a hand on my arm. It's done, she said. I didn't understand. I called them Monday, from the parking lot. After Dr. Raghavan's office called me because you put me down as your contact 11 years ago and never changed it. Her chin was doing something. You're on the schedule for the 14th. Liddy. Where did? Dad, stop talking. And then she told me. Ted Wozniak is 71. He'd been carrying the note himself, selling Liddy the clinic on a handshake and a payment book, 61,000, 5 years, no bank involved, because no bank on this earth was going to lend $61,000 to a PTA with a Corolla. She had $19,400 saved for the balloon. Due November 1st. Her last payment. The one that made it hers. She'd wired it Monday morning. And the rest, the difference she'd put on one of those medical credit cards they hand you at the counter, the ones with deferred interest, which means you don't pay a dime of it for 12 months. And then on month 13 they charge you every penny of the 26.99%, retroactive, all the way back to day 1. I sat on that treatment table in a room that smelled like Bengay and bleach, and I put my hands over my face in front of my own daughter. You bought that clinic since you were 24. I know how long I bought it. Lide. Ted gave me 90 days. She said it steady, like a woman reading a weather report. If I can't make the payment by the 1st of February, he has to take the offer from the chain. He doesn't want to. He's 71 and his wife has Parkinson's and he can't wait forever. She sat down next to me on the table. Buildings can wait, Dad. She took my hand and held it the way you hold something you've decided not to let go of. You can't. They took me in on a Thursday morning at 6. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia is Liddy's face right up close to mine and her thumb going back and forth across my knuckle, and her saying, "I told the nurses you're the stubbornest man in Luzerne County. They said good, stubborn people heal." Where did she learn to be like that, I thought. 30 years old, and she's steadier than I have ever been in my entire life. Then the lights went out. Dr. Raghavan came by that night. She said the graft seeded clean, said I'd been about a year from something she didn't finish the sentence of. I laid there and I thought about a payment book in a drawer in a clinic in Nanticoke, with one line left unfilled. She bought me this, I thought. Not the insurance, not the hospital. My daughter bought me this with the only thing she'd ever wanted for herself. I'm going to make this right, I told myself in that bed with a tube in my arm, however long it takes. If it takes till I'm 80. I had no idea how fast that promise was going to come due. I recovered on Liddy's couch in the half-double on Prospect Street, because my own house was quiet in a way I couldn't be in, and because Darlene never texted once to ask how it went. Not once. Not that day, not that week. Liddy had a whiteboard on her refrigerator, grocery list on one side, and in the corner, in her handwriting, small, like she was hoping nobody would look at it, Febsatu, and under it, a number that went down every Friday when she got paid, 1,100, then 1,600, then 2,200. She was going to try to save $19,000 in 11 weeks on $52,000 a year. I looked at that whiteboard every single morning for 16 days. Everyone. While my son was leasing something German and my wife was telling the ladies at the dental office about her boy's quarter, that whiteboard sat heavier on my chest than the incision did. 16 days after surgery, the mail carrier knocked instead of leaving it. Certified, 2 envelopes. One from an outfit I'd never heard of, Northline Infrastructure Partners, and one with a return address I have known by heart for a decade, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and I want to tell you I felt something when I saw it, but I didn't. 10 years of those envelopes. Cleanup ongoing. No change in status. Do not disturb. Do not sell. Do not breathe on it. I almost set it on the counter. I sat down at Liddy's little table instead and opened it. I read it 3 times. The 3rd time out loud, slow, because I did not trust my own eyes. Remediation complete. Parcel released from consent order effective September 30. Released. 10 years of property taxes on dirt I wasn't allowed to walk on. 10 years of a credit report that looked like a crime scene. 10 years of my own wife looking at me across a table like I was a stain that wouldn't come out. Done. Clean. 1 paragraph. I set that letter down very carefully, the way you set down something that might go off. Then I opened the other one. Here's what had happened while I was weighing trucks. That transmission corridor I'd staked out with my own hands 19 years ago, they built it. And 4 years ago they put a 500 kilovolt switchyard at the end of it, half a mile from my north property line, in the middle of nowhere, because that's where the load was. And it turns out that in the year of our Lord, 44 flat acres inside a half mile of a 500 kilovolt switchyard, with rail on one side and a released environmental status on the other, is the single most valuable kind of empty dirt in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Everybody wants to build a data center. Nobody can get power. Northline's offer was not a feeler. It was signed. It had a legal description, and it had a number. $18,600,000. Cash. 45-day close. I read that number maybe 20 times. I'd love to tell you I hollered. Ran around the apartment. Something. I sat completely still. 18.6 million, I thought. And 9 weeks ago I sat in a truck in the rain and couldn't come up with 18,000. And then I looked up, and my eyes went where they went every morning. The whiteboard. Febsatu. She's at the clinic right now, I thought, with her hands on somebody's frozen shoulder, doing arithmetic in her head about a payment she is not going to be able to make. And something in my chest went very quiet, and very cold, and extremely clear. I didn't call Darlene. I didn't call Trey. I want you to hold on to that, because it matters later, and I want to be exact about why. It wasn't a scheme. I never hid a dime from anybody. I simply could not construct a reason to telephone 2 people who had both, in their own words, in the last 60 days, informed me that I was not their problem. I called Marion Petrosky instead. Marion's 68. He's had the same office above the pierogi place on Wyoming Avenue in Kingston since 1984. He handled my closings back when I had closings. He is one of maybe 2 professionals in this valley who never stop taking my calls after the mine water, and I've always suspected it's because I paid him every month, on time, even when the check was for $40. Vern. Leedy said the surgery went. Marion, I need you to pull a document today. Something in my voice stopped him. I told him all of it, the DEP release, North Line, the number. The line was quiet so long I checked the screen. 18.6, he finally said. Vern, that changes everything. I know it does. I looked at the whiteboard, which is exactly why I need you to pull something else first, before we touch that offer. You remember a document Darlene had drawn up 5 years ago. A long breath on his end. The postnuptial. That's the one. I remember it, Marion said, and something in his voice had changed too. I remember it because I wasn't her lawyer on it. She used a fellow out of Scranton. I told her I didn't love the language. He paused. You want the original? I want the original, and I want you to read it to me. Every word, don't smooth anything. Because if I was remembering that document right, then Darlene had not simply protected herself from what my land had cost. She had signed away everything it might ever be worth. Marion called back in 2 hours. I could hear paper. All right, the operative sentence. And then he read it to me, slow, in that flat Kingston voice. Does hereby waive, release, and forever relinquish any and all present or future claim, title, or interest, legal or equitable, in the real property described herein, together with any and all proceeds, appreciation, or increase in value however arising, whether from misfortune or from fortune. I sat there in my daughter's kitchen with the radiator ticking. Marion, say that last part again. Whether from misfortune or from fortune. Whose language is that? Not mine. He sounded almost sick. Vern, she came to me first. She wanted protection from the tax liens. Full stop. I told her a limited waiver the debt, and only the debt. She said her son had already found somebody who'd do it cleaner. There it is, I thought. Marion. Who paid the retainer? Paper shuffling. A long time. There's a copy of the check in the file, he said quietly. It's not Darlene's account. $2,500, drawn on Trey Kaczmarek's personal checking. Memo line in my son's handwriting, which I have known since he was 7 years old. Mom's postnup protect her from Dad. He'd been 28. He'd sat his mother down at my kitchen table and told her it was smart. He told her it would save her credit if the liens ever reached the property. And he was right. It did. It worked exactly the way he said it would. He just didn't understand that a sentence with a comma in it runs in both directions. I sat there a long while. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest with you. I felt about 90 years old. Then I called Marion back and told him 3 things. Close on North Line. Not one soul outside this call finds out until it's recorded. Second, everything after taxes and my debts goes into an irrevocable trust. One beneficiary, Lydia. Third, and I made him read it back to me twice. Buy the clinic, the building, the practice, the 4 tables, the whirlpool that groans. Pay Ted Wozniak whatever he wants for it, and pay him 20% over whatever the chain offered, and my name goes on nothing. Liddy's name goes on the deed. Free and clear. Vern, Marion said, she's going to fight you on this. She sold her future for a piece of Dacron, Marion. I had to stop. My throat had gone tight, and I was 61, and I was not going to do that on the phone. Fair already happened, I said. It happened in a room that smells like Ben Gay on a Wednesday night. Only one of my kids showed up for it. 8 days. That's what I had between hanging up with Marion and hearing a fist come down on my daughter's door. I want to tell you I spent them planning a speech. I didn't. I walked a little farther every morning. I sat on Liddy's back step in a coat and watched the fog come off the river, and I thought about 44 acres that had finally, after 10 years, stopped punishing me. They came on a Wednesday evening in the first week of December, and it was snowing. First real snow of the year, that fine, dry stuff that doesn't stick to the road but sticks to everything else. The knock was not a knock, it was a fist. Dad, open the door, I know you're in there. Trey's voice, loud. and frayed at the edge in a way I had never once heard out of that boy in 33 years. Liddy got there first, still in her scrubs, and she opened the door with the exact expression she must use on a man who's decided he doesn't need to do his exercises. "Do you want to explain," she said, "why you're beating on my door?" He came past her without answering, Darlene behind him. "Now I want you to picture this. My son, 33 years old, in a dress shirt with a coffee stain on the cuff, tie already pulled loose, sweating in December. My wife behind him with her arms crossed, snow melting in her hair. And neither one of them looked at me and asked how the surgery went. Not one word, not one syllable about the 6-inch line under my shirt. 'Sit down, Trey,' I said. 'You look like you're the one having the aneurysm.' He didn't sit. He paced my daughter's kitchen. 'Mom's attorney ran an asset search this morning.' There it is, I thought. Not from me, from a docket. 'Luzerne County Recorder,' he said. 'Deed memorandum, Northline Infrastructure, 44 acres, Glen Dorset.' His voice went up half a register. $18.6 million, Dad." Darlene's mouth came open. "Vern." She had gone the color of the snow. "Vern, is that?" "It's true," I said, as calm as I could get it. "It recorded 11 days ago." 11 days? Trey's hand came up, finger pointing. "You've had $18 million for 11 days, and you didn't call your own." "The last time I called you," I said, "you were at a steakhouse, and I was in a parking lot, and you told me you weren't going to carry me around in your life." That should have been where he softened. "It wasn't. You hid it." He was jabbing that finger like it made the words truer. "You knew the cleanup was closing out. You knew that ground was about to be worth something. You let Mom drive a 14-year-old Camry. You let this family think we were broke so you could sit on it and hand the whole thing to your favorite." He believes it, I thought. He is rewriting it in real time, standing in his sister's kitchen, and every word of it is true to him. "Trey." My voice came out lower than his, and it made the room go quiet, which is the only trick I've ever learned. "I found out that land was released while I was lying on that couch behind you. 16 days after surgery. Surgery your sister paid for. Don't. I never hid a fortune from this family, son. I hid the fact that I was scared for 10 straight years. Because every time I opened my mouth about it, your mother handed me a bill, and you told me I ruined your 20s. And that's when Darlene said the thing. You want to know when I stopped asking how you were?" We both turned. She had not uncrossed her arms. She was looking at a spot on the wall about a foot to the left of my head. "March 2013. You sat down on the end of our bed and you said, 'Dar, I don't know what to do.'" Her chin moved, and I understood, standing in that doorway, that nobody was coming. Not the bank, not your partner, not you. She looked at me then, and there was 34 years in it. So I stopped asking questions I couldn't afford the answer to. I made a plan and I worked it and I got up every day. And you have hated me for it ever since. And I want you to know that I have never once been sorry, because somebody in that house had to be the one who didn't break. Nobody said anything. The radiator ticked. Upstairs, Liddy's neighbor's television bled through the ceiling the way it had every night for 6 weeks. And I'll tell you the truth. She wasn't wrong. That's the part I have not been able to put down. She was not wrong about one word of it. She'd just decided, somewhere in there, that the price of not breaking was that she'd stop being able to see me, and she paid that price for 11 years without ever once checking the receipt. "Dar," I said, "you could have done both." She didn't answer. Then Trey put his hand flat on my daughter's kitchen table. "Here's what's happening," he said, and his voice dropped into something meaner. "Mom files Friday. Financial abandonment. Concealment of marital assets. My guy is drafting a motion to freeze every account that touched that closing. You'll be in court for 3 years, Dad. You won't have a dime left by the time they're done with you." He hit the table with his palm. The same table where, 6 weeks earlier, my daughter told me it was already done. That's my kid's table, I thought, and he's slapping it like a man who owns something. I stood up, slow, still tender across the middle, and I went to the counter and picked up a manila folder that had been sitting there for 8 days. "You want to talk about lawyers, Trey?" I slid the first page across to Darlene. I watched the color leave her face before she'd finished the first line. 5 years ago, I said, you sat at my kitchen table with our son, and you were frightened. Real, honest fear. The liens were coming, and you thought they'd take the house out from under you. I put my finger on the paragraph. And he told you it was smart. Darlene's hands had started to shake. "Read it," I said, and I said it gently, because there was not one drop of pleasure in me. Not one. It doesn't say debt, Dar. It says proceeds, appreciation, or increase in value however arising. And then it says right there whether from misfortune or from fortune. Silence. You didn't only sign away my bad luck, I said. You signed away my good luck. Same sentence. Same comma. Trey's face had gone gray, but he wasn't finished. He never was, that boy. That doesn't matter. I'll still take you too. On what grounds? And I slid the second page across to my son. He looked down at a photocopy of a check. $2,500, 5 years old, drawn on his own account, in his own hand. Mom's post-nut protector from Dad. He didn't move. You paid for it, I said. You picked the lawyer. You sat as a witness. I want you to understand that the room did not feel like victory. It felt like standing in a house after the fire's out. Go ahead, I said. Bring every lawyer in this county. But before you do, you get up in front of a judge in Wilkes-Barre, and you explain how you intend to claim a share of a parcel your mother legally released on paper that you paid for. And then I put down the third page. Not a bank statement. A letter, handwritten, from a 71-year-old physical therapist named Ted Wozniak, granting Lydia Kaczmarek a 90-day extension on a balloon payment of $19,000, and at the bottom, under his signature, in ballpoint, "Take care of your dad, kid. The clinic will wait as long as I can make it wait." Underneath that, I laid the statement from the medical credit card, balance, rate, and the date, in 12 months, when 26.99% of deferred interest would land on it all at once, retroactive to day one. Your sister emptied everything she has ever saved in her life, I said, for a 9-inch piece of fabric. And when it wasn't enough, she signed that. I looked at my son. You put titanium into strangers' backs for a living, Trey. And when your father needed a piece of Dacron, a stranger who fixes shoulders in a strip mall in Nanticoke gave more than you did. And that's when it happened. Trey Kaczmarek sat down. Not on a chair. He went down on my daughter's kitchen floor with his back against the cabinet, in his dress shirt, in his good shoes, and he put both hands over his face. I didn't have it. Nobody moved. What? Darlene said. I didn't have it. His voice came out through his fingers. Dad. That night, at the restaurant, he was breathing wrong. Do you know what I was doing in that bathroom before I called you back? I couldn't say anything. I was reading a clawback letter. He took his hands down. His face was ruined. My top account got indicted in August. Federal. Unnecessary procedures. Every commission I earned off him for 2 years is being pulled back. $411,000, Dad, on paper, in a spreadsheet. He laughed, and it was the worst sound I have ever heard a person make. I had $11,000 in my checking account, and I owed $400. I couldn't have given you $1,800, let alone $18,000. The snow was coming down past the window. Then why, I said, and my voice was not steady, did you tell me I was dead weight? And my son looked up at me from the floor of his sister's kitchen, 33 years old, and told me the truest thing anybody has said to me in my life. Because I would rather you thought I was cruel, he said, than have you find out I turned into you. Now, I want to stop here, because this is the part of the story where I'm supposed to feel good, and I have played it back in my head about 4,000 times and it has never once felt good. I spent 10 years believing my son was a hard man who despised me. He was a frightened one who was terrified of becoming me. Which is worse, because you can walk away from a man who despises you. You cannot walk away from a boy who looked at your life and decided that the only unforgivable sin on this earth is not being able to pay. He didn't learn that at a steakhouse. He learned it at my kitchen table, watching his mother slide a bill across it month after month after month to a man who couldn't cover it. Shame is the most expensive thing any family owns, and it never, ever gets paid for by the person who bought it. It gets paid by whoever in that house is kindest. Which in my house was a 30-year-old woman with $19,400 and a payment book. I didn't give my son $1. I want to be very clear about that, because I know some of you are already typing, and I understand. I don't think you can hand money to a man who is drowning in the belief that money is the measure of a man. You'd just be confirming it. What I did was I reached into my coat, and I put a business card on the floor next to him, Marion Petrosky's, with a bankruptcy attorney's name written on the back in Marion's handwriting. I've been in that chair, I said. I sat in it for 10 years, and nobody came. He didn't pick it up. When you're ready, I said, I'll drive you. I'll sit in the parking lot. That's the only thing I own that you actually need, and it's the one thing you have never once asked me for. Then I looked at my wife, who had not moved, who was still standing there with snow melting in her hair. You wanted the house, Dar. My voice came all the way down. You've got the house. I hope it's warm. And she opened her mouth, and 34 years came up into her face, and nothing came out of it. Get out of my daughter's home, I said. They went. No slammed door. No last word. Just two people walking out into the snow, understanding in real time that the cleverest thing my son ever did was the exact thing that locked him out. Liddy stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms wrapped around herself. Dad, you didn't have to give me all of it. Yeah, I said. I did. The clinic closed on the 22nd of January, 10 days before Ted would have had to sell it. Her name's on the deed. Mine's on nothing. That was the whole point. Ted comes in Tuesdays and Fridays now because his wife has good mornings and bad ones, and he says he'd go out of his mind sitting home. Liddy pays him. He fights her about it every single Friday. They hung a photograph in the waiting room. Ted at 30, in 1979, with the parallel bars behind him and his whole life in front of him. She never asked me for $1 of that trust. Not one. She still drives the Corolla. I'm working on her. And Trey. Trey called me at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in September, 11 months after the snow. He didn't say much. Neither did I. I drove to Moon Township, and I sat in his driveway until the sun came up, and then we went to see a man about a filing. I'm not going to tell you that fixed it. It didn't fix anything. My son and I are two men who are learning how to be in a car together. But he asked, finally, for the only thing I ever had. Here's what 22 years in a scale house taught me, and it took an aneurysm and a snowstorm to make me apply it at home. A truck comes in loaded. A truck goes out empty. And the number in the middle, that's what got taken out of the ground. And there's no arguing with it, because the scale doesn't care what the driver says. I spent my whole life being extremely precise about that number for a limestone company. And I never once weighed my own kitchen. I never asked what my daughter was carrying, because she never set it down where I could see it. And I never asked what my son was carrying, because he'd been very careful to make sure it looked like a suitcase full of money. So here's the thing I want you to do today. It'll take you 15 minutes and it won't cost you a nickel. Get a piece of paper. Write down the name of the person in your family who never asks you for anything, and then make an actual list, the real one, of what they've carried. Every ride to the airport. Every casserole. Every night in a hospital chair. Every phone call they took at 11 p.m. Write it out. Don't do it in your head. Your head will let you cheat. And then call them and read it to them. That's it. That's the whole assignment. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't make it about you. Just prove to them that somebody, somewhere, was finally reading the scale. And here's the question I'd like you to sit with. It isn't who's taking from me. It's this one. Who in my family has been quietly paying for my shame? Because somebody is. There's always somebody. And I promise you they haven't mentioned it, because the kind of person who pays that bill is never the kind of person who sends it. All right, before I let you go, I want to hear from you, and I mean it because I have argued myself into all three of these at 3 in the morning. Comment 1 if you think I was right to give Liddy every dime and Trey. Nothing that a man who's drowning in the belief that money makes him worth something is the last man on earth you hand money to. Comment 2 if you think I should have helped my son with the clawback right there on that kitchen floor. He was on the ground. He'd told the truth. Some of you are going to say a father doesn't make his son wait 11 months. Comment 3 if you think I should never have laid that check on the table in front of him. That I could have won that room with the post-nup alone, and I reached for the check because I wanted him to feel it. There's no wrong answer. Number 3 keeps me up. And tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. It's a strange, good thing knowing this is playing in a kitchen in Manila at 4 in the morning, and on a bus in Manchester at lunch, and in a truck outside a job site somewhere it's already dark. And if you have ever been the quiet one, the one nobody bragged about on the phone, the one they told everybody else to go ask, tell us. Don't dress it up. Somebody scrolling past your comment tonight has never heard anybody say it out loud. If this one landed, subscribe and stay a while. It's just me, these stories, and a comment section that keeps me honest. Thank you for spending this hour with me. Go write that list, then go read it to them. Take care of yourself. This is a fictional story, inspired by real emotional experiences. fully rewritten and reimagined in Wilkes-Barre to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.